A man sits in a small room, wires taped to his fingers, a cuff wrapped around his arm. He's asked calmly whether he killed her. He says no. The machine barely moves. He's lying. And somehow the machine believes him completely. This isn't a flaw in the equipment. The machine is working exactly as designed. The problem is something far stranger and far more unsettling, hiding in the assumption the entire test is built on. Here's what a polygraph actually measures. Not lies. It has no way to detect a lie directly. What it measures is stress, heart rate, blood pressure, sweat gland activity, the physical signature of a nervous system responding to pressure. The test works on ordinary people because, for most of us, lying about something serious produces measurable anxiety. Your body reacts before your conscious mind can smooth it over. But that entire test rests on one quiet assumption, that the person being tested experiences the same internal alarm everyone else does when they lie about something that matters. For a specific kind of offender, that assumption simply doesn't hold. The psychologist David Lykken spent much of his career studying exactly this gap, and he became one of the most influential critics of polygraph testing in its history. Lykken's research found that the polygraph doesn't measure deception. It measures fear of detection, two very different things that happen to overlap in most people and diverge completely in others. Lykken's studies on individuals with psychopathic traits revealed something the polygraph industry didn't want to hear. These individuals often show a blunted physiological response to threat in general, not just during lie detection, but across a wide range of stress-inducing situations. Their baseline startle response is weaker. Their anticipatory anxiety, the dread most people feel before something bad might happen, is measurably reduced. It isn't that they're suppressing the reaction through willpower. The alarm system that would normally produce it is, in a very real physiological sense, quieter to begin with. This means when a psychopathic individual sits down for a polygraph and denies committing a crime, their body isn't hiding a stress spike. There often isn't one to hide. The psychologist Robert Hare, whose decades of research established the modern clinical understanding of psychopathy, found something that deepens this problem even further. Hare's work identified that individuals scoring high on psychopathic traits frequently show reduced amygdala reactivity, the brain region most responsible for processing fear and anticipating punishment. In practical terms, the emotional machinery that makes most people flinch internally before a lie isn't damaged or disabled. It's simply operating with less voltage from the very start. Hare's research also revealed something crucial about how this plays out in real interrogation settings. Where an ordinary person lying about a serious crime experiences a cascade of anticipatory dread before, during, and after the lie, someone with pronounced psychopathic traits often experiences the interview as a low-stakes performance, almost like solving a puzzle rather than facing genuine danger. The lower the perceived stakes feel internally, the smaller the physiological signature, and the harder that signature becomes to detect on a machine built entirely around measuring stress. This explains one of the most disturbing patterns documented across decades of criminal investigation. Confident, controlled offenders don't beat the polygraph through superior acting skill. In many cases, they pass with genuinely calm physiology because the test is measuring an alarm bell that, for them, was never wired to ring as loudly in the first place. But the story doesn't end there, because deliberate deception adds a second layer entirely separate from psychopathy. The researcher Charles Honts has spent decades studying something called polygraph countermeasures, deliberate techniques some individuals use to manipulate their own physiological readings during the exam itself. Honts's research found that with surprisingly little practice, people can learn to artificially inflate their responses to control questions, ordinary baseline questions unrelated to the crime, making their reactions to relevant questions appear comparatively smaller and less significant by contrast. Simple techniques: biting the tongue, tensing a muscle, doing quiet mental arithmetic. Small physical or mental actions performed at precise moments during the test, invisible to an untrained examiner, capable of meaningfully distorting the entire physiological baseline the test depends on. Honts found that with as little as 20 or 30 minutes of coaching, a substantial percentage of study participants successfully defeated the exam, and trained examiners frequently couldn't tell the difference between a countermeasure and a naturally calm response. Put these two mechanisms together, and you get a deeply uncomfortable picture. Some individuals pass because their internal alarm system genuinely doesn't activate as strongly as it does in most people. Others pass because they've learned to manipulate a measurement system built on assumptions that were never designed to withstand deliberate interference. Either way, the machine records the same result: calm, truthful, cleared. This is precisely why polygraph results are inadmissible as direct evidence in most courts, and why experienced investigators increasingly treat a past polygraph not as proof of innocence, but as one data point among many, easily undermined by exactly the kind of offender the test was least equipped to catch. Understanding this reframes something that has quietly troubled criminal investigations for generations. The polygraph was never actually testing for guilt. It was testing for a very specific, very human kind of fear, the fear of being caught. And it turns out that fear isn't universal. It isn't even reliable within the population most likely to need catching. Think back to that man in the small room, wires taped to his fingers, calmly denying everything while the machine registered nothing unusual at all. He wasn't beating the system through skill or cunning necessarily. In many documented cases, he simply wasn't afraid, and a machine built entirely to detect fear has no way of measuring the absence of something that was never there to begin with.